Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring Land.
Oh, just kidding.
Blasphemer!
All
Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
Kind of pointless.
We know all things.
All right, welcome back to Boring Reviews. Nick here.
Gabe, Gaiton Day.
And me and Gabe are bringing another movie review for you. You know, I don't know what we were doing. We were too busy, I guess. But we are trying to make up for lost time. And Gabe, what are we reviewing today? Before you say it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Go ahead.
We are reviewing Master. And this just came out literally about a month ago. And again, between cricket, other reviews we've been doing, reactions, school business, been super busy. But man, I tell you what, a lot of thoughts on this film. You know, I enjoyed this film. Let me first and foremost say that. But I had some problems with it. I had some issues with it, and we'll talk about those. But one thing I will say right off the bat, bro, I think that this is the best soundtrack. And I fell in love with some of these songs, man. Master's Coming, that
Master the Blaster.
Dude, that was insane, bro. And my daughter, who's in dance choreography, she's like, man, they did a really good job with that set piece. She happened to be, just watching when I was downstairs. And, that's high praise coming from her. As I mentioned to you, she just got into the Las Vegas Dance Academy out here, and she's been dancing her whole life. She was like, that's dope. And it had that song, and then it had that other song, Life is Very Short, Always Be Happy, when he's talking to the kids at the reformatory school. That was such a different, oh my gosh, it was so awesome, such an emotional song, but even the choreography there was sharp too. So dare I say, since probably Gully Boy, I have not enjoyed a musical soundtrack as much as I did for Master, bro.
Wow. Yeah, no, the music was definitely evident. It definitely made its mark on me as well, especially in the last 30-minute sequence. The beats, and I knew I was going to forget it on the spot, but I just kept playing it in my head over and over. The music was absolutely fantastic. This is a different type of film for me. Okay. Right. And this is probably going to be the hardest I can review, and it has nothing to do with being worried what our audience is going to say by my opinion, or it has nothing to do with that. Right. This is going to be the hardest movie for me to review because I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it. Let me start off by saying I thought this was a very, very good film. Right. I don't have too many problems with it, and I'm going to talk about all the things I liked, which were quite a few things that I sincerely enjoyed about this movie. But there was just something, I don't know if it was the pacing. I don't know if it was the way the story was kind of chunked. I have no idea, but there was just something about this movie where it was kind of preventing it from being a really, really strong film. Before I get into that, let's just say this is directed and written partly by Lokesh Gadagaraj, Rathna Kumar, and Ron Parthaban also wrote it. I got to give love to the writers. Story by Gadagaraj, starring Vj, which is our first time Vj in this Tamil film that we've seen him in a film. And then also Vj Sethupathi. So I think this is our second time we've seen him in a film. Right. And, the movie's about these two guys. But I think I finally figured out what this film can best be described as, at least for me. I feel like this film would make for a really, really good limited episode series. Okay. And it almost seemed like each chunk of the movie, every 30 minutes, it's a 3-hour movie. Right. Every 30 minutes would make for its own, really, really good episode where it's building up on itself and it's delivering for that. Can you imagine the last 30 minutes being the last episode in the season? That would be awesome, right? Everything is being led up to. So that's what I feel like this movie is. There's people that our audience members that watched it day one in India, right when it came out saying, it was really good, but not the best from Vj. Other people said, hey, you got to check it out. It's really good, but some parts I've heard some comments from people saying the first hour, is, not the best, but then it picks up. Right. And so I went into it with kind of that mindset, not having high expectations. I want to say from those things that were told in comments, this movie exceeded those expectations, but it was just missing something.
Okay, and I guess this is how we're gonna go into this review before we get into it. Here's the thing: the first like 30 minutes, I was confused because I thought that Vj Sethupath's character was Joseph Vijay's character. I didn't realize they were two separate characters. I thought he was gonna be the kid that early on loses his family and you know they die in a fire set by these gangsters. They send him to jail. He grows up to be our hero because that's a lot of character development for him, right? He goes in, he's being beat with the sticks or whatnot, and boom, boom, boom. And at one point, he just stops like trying to run or whatever he's taking. He's like, look, I don't got money to pay to get out of here. So I'm just going to have to sit here and take it. Eventually, you can get tired before I die.
Yep.
And that was crazy. And they did such a great job giving him that character development or whatever. Come to find out, he's a bad guy. Mind you, I love bad guys. But here's a problem that I had with this film. The tonal shift, bro. Because you make us like him so much early on, right? Punching the walls, coming back, getting his revenge or whatever. Those sick lines, you know, I'll give you 2 minutes. I love that. You know, they both, it's funny too. They both
he was a boss.
Where they kept, you know, with their shirts. You know,
so he was doing the mouth and then Sethupathi was doing the hand.
It was... But then they set him up to get so dark. The tonal shift. So the music was unbelievable in here. Master, when they're at the college or whatever, that was so. Master's coming. That was so awesome. To always be happy. And then, spoiler alert, if you ain't already seen this, spoiler alert. That's how we do our reviews here, cousin. The two kids get hung. Wait, you're supposed to be a champion for these kids. You were one of these kids, Vj Sethupathi, and they just made it so dark there. It completely shifted the tone of this film, and I think that that's the problem. It's almost two movies, right? It's Joseph Vijay's character, who with him we don't get any backstory. He does a little bit of the how the Joker was in The Dark Knight, right? Every time somebody asks him, we give him a different story or version of his backstory, so we don't get backstory until we hear from his professor that he was an orphan and that the professor that was impactful to him died, and that caused him to drink. And you know, he's also, even though, and that's why I love about what they did at the end, which really hit for me, even though he's our hero, he's also a flawed hero, right? He's an alcoholic. He because of him, these two kids died. They ended up getting hung. A lot of his students from the college ended up getting killed, poked or whatever, because of his beef with Bhavani. And I mean, that to me was one of the things that drove me crazy, right? You finally got the Bhavani, bro. I would have poked him up right there. Now I realized he didn't know that was Bhavani when he first got to him, but once you got him, I would have poked him up right there. Because it's a gangster, bro. You don't walk away from that kind of thing.
With a pen?
With a pen? Bro, have you not seen The Equalizer? You would have poked somebody with a pen.
You being such a fan of the villain should know better than anyone else in film. You take out the boss, then you're not getting out of there alive. You're not getting out of there alive. Him having, and he didn't know it was the boss. He didn't know it was the boss. Yes. But him having the fact that they knew it was the boss, the fact that there was a chance that he can get hurt, that was the only thing that kept him alive. Again, I'm not saying he knew that, because it was kind of weird too. Like, he's wearing this red thing. Like, that was a weird thing for me. That was a weird.
I knew it was the boss. I knew it was the boss right away.
Why is he wearing the red thing unless he's trying to get captured, which he wasn't?
No, he was in the restroom. He was coming out of the restroom.
But I never seen the entire movie him wearing that little shawl thing over his head. Again, I don't know. We've never seen that before. It was kind of like, you didn't even need that, right? Because he had never met Bhavani. So he could have just come to a guy at the back and said, hey, take me to your spot, right? And that was kind of funny, though, when he has him, and we're skipping around here, but he's like, who knows Bhavani? And he just raises his hand.
I knew that was coming. I was like, yes, I
did not know.
But what's your plan, bro? Once you get the Bhavani, threaten him, and that's going to be like, bro, I just, that to me, I don't know. If
and then being shocked that Bhavani's going to retaliate the way he retaliated.
What were you thinking, bro?
It was a weird scene. Absolutely.
And to me, that's like, I'm like, oh, come on. But you know what? Let's give a little synopsis of the film real quick. An alcoholic
synopsis.
An alcoholic. This is what IMDb says, right? An alcoholic professor is sent to a juvenile school where he clashes with a gangster who uses the school children for criminal activities. First and foremost, to me, that in and of itself doesn't even explain enough about this film, because they give Bhavani's character a lot of character building, right? They forgot to mention that he was one of these kids that were used by these gangs, so that's how he knew how things worked. But again, I think that was a tonal shift that, to me, it goes from being fun to being totally dark. I was rooting for, and I love you know me, I love the bad guys, I love the villains. But Bhavani took it too far, bro. He went, what even I can. I was like, bro, he hung 2 kids. That's you know what I mean, dude?
Okay,
That's
so let me speak to your points there first. Again, if this was like an 8-episode series, right? And you had more time to play with, I think it would be kind of an interesting idea to have one episode be that dark episode with Bhavani. The next episode be a little lighter with Master. And then have that switch back and forth for a few episodes until that kind of lost its novelty, and then kind of mesh it together, because we do see Master willing to go a little darker once he sobers up and whatnot. Again, I still think that series idea would really play for this show. But this is the thing, and you mentioned it to a certain degree, which I appreciate, because it's one of my big points here. You get the character development of Bhavani. And again, this might be a small thing, but the Bhavani kid looked nothing like Sethupathi whatsoever. I'm not sure why they cast that kid whatsoever. And I'm not just talking about the weight or whatever, but I mean, looked nothing like him. Okay, whatever. And the kid's like 17 or 18, so it's not like he was like 5 years old. But you get the backstory. We understand where he's coming from. Why did we not get the backstory for Master, for JD? Because both these characters are kind of 2 sides of the same coin, but not that black and white. But if you get the backstory on Master, because I'm telling you right now, when the professor tells Sharu, the girlfriend, or the wannabe girlfriend, or whatever you want to call her, when he tells her what actually happened, there was no emotional pop for me, at least. There wasn't like, oh, that was a great reveal. No wonder you waited 2 hours before you. There was no point for that. If you set him up and you set up Bhavani and you have these 2 characters both going through some kind of tragedy, going through hardship, and moving their way up, then I think that just makes for a little bit more of a understanding of the film. I don't know why we have the mystery of the Master, unless this was a sequel, which I don't think it is. But again, let me talk about the things I really, really liked about this film. Okay, you mentioned Vj Sethupathi. I love his portrayal of this character. It was a little 1-2 note, but he did it fantastically. And even like, I'm not sure if Sethupathi can't really dance, but he wasn't really trying too hard when he busted those few dance moves. I'm not sure if that's just the best. I can't dance either. But that was kind of funny, or even he danced like a guy who just has a one-mind mission there. But his whole revenge tour and everything was fantastic, and you're right. He kind of went a little too far with those kids, but he's a bad guy, for crying out loud. I love Vj and his portrayal. This guy is just cool. This guy is just he is just a model of cool. I don't want to see, because I don't know how old this guy is. He was born he's 46. Can you believe that? 46. I would have believed if you would have told me he was 32. No joke. Because this guy, he's just the model of cool. I love the fact that again, 2 sides of the same coin. What was Vj Sethupathi's power? What was Bhavani's power? His fist. And I loved that they kind of made him almost like a realistic superhero. Okay? Because I'm sorry, no matter how many times you hit your fist, you're not going to turn it into a thing of stone. But they kind of had that where he just built it up, and it was like the outward symbolism of him being stronger inside and hardened inside for what happened to his family. And he had that superpower. And what did JD have, right? He had his little what is that? Like the Boj? It's not the Boj. What is that? I can't think what that thing is called. But the little bracelet, right?
Like a bangle. I was gonna say, what is that thing? Made out of titanium?
Bangle, yeah.
That thing does not give, bro. Thing
that and his bucket, right? That bucket was doing damage. You know what I was thinking with that bucket scene is the handle would have fallen off after the first hit. But anyways, so he's got the ring. And so they both have the 2 sides of the same coin. And that one scene where they clash the Titans, that was really cool. I loved the set. There was about 5 different action sequences in here that made my jaw drop. They were so amazingly choreographed and acted by the actors and the stuntmen. They were fantastic. And they were epic too. They were awesome. Even though one of them was kind of like Fast and Furious, with the car and the bow and arrow. I still love that scene, how the hot top goes up and she rises up with the bow. And then, of course, aesthetically, it doesn't make any sense to hold the bow sideways, but that was still kind of cool how he was doing that and flipping the bow. There was just some cool scenes in this film. I'm going to take a break here because I know you got some things, but those are some of my favorite things about the movie.
You know, when it comes to Bhavani versus Vijay, well, they're actually both Vijay, right? Vijay,
I know, exactly.
And Joseph Vijay. But Bhavani versus JD, that one fight scene, bro, it was like a 13-hit combo. It reminded me of Killer Instinct. 36-hit combo. It was like,
and the power goes down.
Bro, that was absolutely sick. You know what I'm saying? But again, yeah, they gave him, obviously, JD, the more athletic guy, where Bhavani was just pure strength, bro. He punched through a side of beef or whatever was hanging there. That's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? My man got
concrete through so many things.
Great strength, right? And I was like, holy cow, this was pretty cool. Again, the action scenes, I love those fight scenes. I love the bucket fight scenes, even the kabaddi fight scene, right? I've never watched a game of kabaddi, but I know what kabaddi is because we've done a video on it, right? That was pretty cool. I was like, oh, and it was funny, right? When the other character, we're gonna get to him later, Das, who's played by Arjun Das.
Oh man, what about that voice, man?
Bro, he had the deepest voice for a young kid
of all time.
I love this kid's acting. This kid had this intensity about him, and he did a fabulous job. And it was funny because he was like, this here is, hold on, let me try to do the deep voice. This here is kabaddi. I can't even get that deep. This here is kabaddi. He said, this isn't cricket or football. You know what I mean? Like, oh, wow. He's like, all right, I got you. Roll up the sleeves. Those all worked. But even that scene is levity, right? The Fast and the Furious scene with the bow, even though I'll talk about that later. Nobody in this town got a gun. They need to go over to Mizpar, bro. We got them by the
But I love it because that would have been too easy, right?
You know what I mean? But yeah, they got to get the bow. Come on, go to Mizpar. We got a whole bunch of gats over there for you. Just say it. They're all over the place. I'm like, what's going on over here? I was fine with that, but you cannot give me all those great action, fun scenes that, you know, you got to be suspended in disbelief to accept it. All right, it's part of the movie. And then just give me that dark scene with the two kids. Actually, if they hadn't shown it, it was fine. But bro, they showed it. And I was like, now we'll say that is where we did get some character building from Vijay, right? Because that's when you first saw him tear up a little bit. And then when he goes to the police station and he tells his the love interest, you know, I've never cried. She says, you never cried? Took him into the room and showed him the mother crying. And that's when he absolutely broke down crying. He read the letter. He's bawling. The guys come in there. The jail fight scene was awesome. Like, you ripped my letter? Oh, man. So those things worked. But again, that darkness, the tonal shift threw me off there for a second. Because is this the Master's Coming movie or the Always Be Life is Too Short? Or is it the... Man, we got kids hanging over here. That just went super, super dark. So for me, like I said, that's a little bit about the tonal shift. I did want to touch on something else. Did you feel that the bow and arrow was put in there because there were no strong female characters in this film? That's the only other issue I have with this, where the love interest barely gets any character development, right? You get the one chase scene where they're chasing her around town, and for the love of Pete, it's one of his students that saves her or whatever. He's like, Who's that? Who's that?
That kid was phenomenal, by the way.
Phenomenal job.
He was phenomenal. I loved his voice, but he was a phenomenal young actor.
He did a really, really good job. And I'm like, all right, is this it? Like, I don't know. You know, sometimes you not necessarily have to have a heroine, right? But you want that strong female character. And I think that the film lacked it. And that's why they, maybe in writing it or producing, oh, you know what? This is perfectly where we're going to put the bow and arrow, because and I don't know if they even paid that off. Like, did she teach archery at the school or whatever? How does she know how to do that? You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me speak to that for a second, because my first thought was, did I miss where she was messing around with the bow and arrow? Because it's possible I could have missed it. Did I miss that? Because I'm not sure where the bow and arrow plays. The only thing I thought of why they had the bow and arrow there is because, to your point, they didn't have any guns that I can think of in this entire movie. No. And so you're not really, I mean, you could have someone throwing daggers, I guess, but I mean, come on. So the bow and arrow kind of plays more to that type of weapon where it's not just a gun. But I see what you're saying. Like, was she developed enough to where she was like, where he's going to say, I need someone to help me out in this. Let me call this girl. I will say, though, that when she starts to fall off the car, I seriously thought she was done. And then he catches that last minute. That actually made me like a little worried. I will admit to that, maybe jump a little bit because I thought she was done. But I see what your point is right there. I didn't really get it too much. I was thinking when the girl was being chased by the dude, creepy guy with the hair, where he just walks up and he goes like this and he goes like this and he pulls the knife out. I'm like, whoa! Like I thought she was gonna like he wasn't gonna be able to help her out, and so I thought he was like, okay, well, I'll take matters in my own hands. But not saying it had to do that. I just thought this was gonna happen.
You know, something else that they touched on this film is something that, and I don't know how true this is in India, but I know that this is a big issue here. Most of these kids went to this reformatory school over petty crimes, but once they get in there, now they're being forced to confess to murders. They're being used, right? They're being forced to concern. And once you get in, it's almost like no out. Basically, they got you, and that's a problem. Here in America, where because of the bail cash system, you could get, a kid could get in trouble for shoplifting, right? Boosting a backpack. If you can pay the bail, you're out. If not, you're in there till trial. Trial normally takes 4, 5, 6 months. While you're in there, you're going to catch a case or two because you're in there with other inmates that are in there for serious reasons. And it becomes this perpetual cycle of people get in there, get more cases or more charges thrown on them while they're awaiting trial. And now somebody that might have gone in for a petty crime or even a justifiable one, like the kid said, I was raised by my neighbor. He tried to sleep with my mom, all this other crazy stuff. Like, I understand that, you know what I mean? But now this kid goes in there and they want him to confess to a murder, or now he has to become part of the drug trade and stuff like that. And that was another thing that kind of bothered me. Like I said, I was so on the Bhavani train, bro, until the dead bodies, and then he's pumping these kids full of drugs and alcohol to keep them, basically in this stupor and keep using them in his criminal enterprise. If you came from that and you've came from that world, why would you continue to perpetuate that? You know what I mean? And some people would say, no, that's real life. That's art imitating real life, because most abusers were abused, right? So that's what you learned. That's what happened to you. That's what's going to happen. But I would have liked for them to, or maybe that's the point, right? To not make him be that good guy and clearly have that redeemable quality, right? Clearly let you know, no, he's an absolute bad guy.
Yeah, I honestly didn't have any problem with that. I thought it was interesting that they were willing to go that dark and use the kids as part of his ultimate plan. But I mean, correct me if I'm mistaken. I'll mention that later. As far as what you're saying, I mean, when he was in the reformatory himself, there was no one looking out for him. There was not one scene where someone gave him a helping hand and took him under their wing. He had resorted early on, I've got to take care of myself, and I got to get myself out of here and do what I got to do. And once I do get out, I'm going to go after those 3 guys and get what's mine. So it doesn't surprise me that he had no loyalties to the adults around him either. He's slapping guys around. He says, hey, sit down right here. He's like, why are you sitting down? Get out of here. He does not really care. I mean, he cares more about chicken that fell off the biryani than he cares about his guys. Hey, don't waste that chicken. He put some water on it, and then he eats it, and then he throws it. But I didn't really have too much of a problem with that because it was developing his character as what it was. I thought it was interesting that they put a little more thought into it, and they had the whole tattoo, and they had the fact that these kids are getting freebies. These guys are getting free stuff so they can be used later. That totally reminded me, believe it or not, of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first film, where those kids were playing arcades, they were getting smokes, they were playing games, and whatever they wanted to do. Whatever you want to do, then do it. So that they can be used by Shredder and by the Foot Clan to steal and get money that they wanted. Let me ask you this, though. I was kind of confused about this. It seemed like he was taking over that lorry business and the union and everything from a system that was already developed. It wasn't like he introduced the fact of using these kids as his patsies, right? That was already in place by the previous management, correct?
To my understanding, that's what was different, that he used the kids to commit the crimes or whatnot, where the other people wouldn't necessarily do so. I thought that he was the one that introduced that.
So I might have missed that, but I didn't feel like with a timeline that he had been in charge for that long, for long enough to be able to develop this whole system like that had been around for at least a year or two. I didn't think he was in charge for that long, but maybe that's something I missed. I will say with this film, it was very difficult for me reading the subtitles because there was so much dialogue, and I don't know if we could have fit maybe more words on the screen of dialogue so I can get a chance to read all of it. Right. But there was a lot of words that I lost in translation because it was so fast. And for someone who doesn't understand the language and trying to catch up and it's so fast, it gets you like really tired too. Like I was kind of a little drowsy at times because I was trying to keep up to it. So maybe I missed that in that translation. It's very possible.
You know, like I said, it was just, I don't know, maybe the director chose to do this. But my point is, why build this guy up to be such a cool character? And we're talking about Bhavani, right? I love this character through the first hour of the movie, okay? And then after those kids, I was like, oh my gosh, what did they do? Why build him up that spend that time on JD? You know what I'm saying? Give him, like you said, some character building. Like, I love the scene when he's bidding auctioning off who's gonna kill him. 100 lakh, 80 lakh, 70 lakh. What people like, and the old dude's like, oh wait, they are gonna turn on us. You know, that was so boss. You know what I mean? Like, so many things I loved about him early on, and then they just they gave him to you and then took him away, kind of. You know what I mean? Because I don't know how anybody could root for that character after that scene with the kids, and then you find out that he's pumping the kids full of drugs to use them and stuff like that. And then even later on, that because he's using Das, because nobody's really seen Bhavani, so they think Das is the boss, the kid's in the jail, he's gonna kill Das. Like, bro, this guy's, like you said, loyal to no. Maybe that was it, man. Make you love him, and then we're gonna take him away. Because I was like, this is the first time in a long time I have not rooted for the bad guy. Because I was so rooting for him the first hour, and then I was like, what? Oh man, it was just despicable act after despicable act. He's sitting there, bro. They're showering him. His hair's all in ponytails, and he's on the phone.
He had the horns.
He's like, oh yeah, well, we're gonna kill the closest ones to you. I got a list. I did some little investigation. You know,
don't forget. He used the cricket terminology. Wasn't that awesome? According to me, we got 2 wickets down. You know, and you got 2 injured, 2 out retired by injured. So it's going to be 4 wickets daily. I thought that was nice.
I was like, yeah, just gangster. Just so gangster with it, bro. I mean,
I'm surprised. I'm honestly, I don't know if you're hanging around me too much or not, if I finally got to you, because this villain to me is not the darkest in a movie that we reviewed together. And you always support the villain, always to a fault support the villain. To me, this guy's not any darker than many other villains that we've seen. So I'm not questioning you, but I'm just surprised. I'm surprised.
I think it was the thing about those kids. Correct me if I'm wrong. When's the last time you saw kids just hanging in a film? I mean, this thing had to be rated R because you can't just put that in hanging, bro. I was like, oh, this guy is ruthless. You know what I'm saying, bro?
That was tough, but let me say this. My favorite scene in the movie, a lot of great action scenes. And, well, first of all, my second favorite is obviously the end fight between Vj and Vijay. I thought that was fantastic. I don't feel like it was cheap in whatsoever. It was great. And there was a moment, I can't remember exactly what happened, but Vj, Joseph, he came back, right? And he got the upper hand. And then he got up and he kind of did one of these. Yeah. It was arms out, stretched out. And it totally reminded me like a WWE event because he gets up for the crowd to see what he did. But there was no one watching. I wonder if that was a small little WWE nod. I don't know. But my favorite scene in the entire movie was not an action scene. Right. It was the scene where the kids are taken in the container, whatever that thing is called, in the truck, and he goes to the place, and you got those kids that are goofing around and laughing and enjoying the fact that their boss got the upper hand, and the one teacher's like, I'll take the blame. Here's a stick. Go after him right now. I love that scene because he goes in there, and you don't see this too many times in films. I don't care what region. But he decided this stick is going to do nothing, okay? This stick is not going to convince them to either give me information or to teach them a lesson or show them what we're actually trying to do here. So he threw the stick, and he decided to show himself being vulnerable, which we as teachers, we only teach 4th grade kids. But if you show weakness to a 4th grade kid, they're going to eat you alive. But he was vulnerable. He was crying. He was telling him, and he was almost not whiny, but he was just telling him and pleading the case. I thought that was such a beautiful scene because you saw his acting range, his amazing ability to go to those places. Like you said, he did that a few times in the film, but there was something about the music. There was something about the tonal shift, how you can see on the actors' faces that are playing the bad guys, how they're kind of like listening to what he's saying and kind of putting pieces together when they were so cocky and they were so full of themselves not too earlier, and how that worked to where he just wanted to tell them, this is not love. This is not what, yeah, you're getting free stuff, but he's using you. This is not what it's all about. This is not what you should do. He walks away like, okay, I said my piece. And then eventually the guy's like, this is where they're at. I love that scene, hands down. That was my favorite scene.
I think, it's funny you mentioned that scene because he's teaching right there, right? They called it preaching, but ultimately he's teaching. I like the fact where he's gotten beat down by Bhavani. Bhavani gives him one of those monster bear punches, right? But, he explodes through a window or whatever. And the kids are like, master's down. They're all going to, getting knives or whatever, trying to go after Bhavani. He's like, no. I'm here fighting for you guys so you guys don't have to. What, you know what I mean? So you guys don't ever have to pick up another arm. And, Bhavani's like, look at him, even in his last dying breaths, he's teaching. And that's what I believe all true teachers will do. You want to try to get to them, even when you want to get through to them. And I think that was the complete arc because he failed his students. Let's just be real. He failed those two kids because he was drunk on the table and, didn't read the letter that was in his pocket. They end up getting hung, right? He failed those two kids. He failed the kids that got kidnapped because he went there thinking, I'm going to threaten Bhavani and Bhavani's not going to retaliate. He failed his former students, right? Because his former students went to help him, and now they're getting clipped. Like you said, those wickets are falling because of him. So I think that this was his complete arc. And I think the one thing I did appreciate about this film, right? He's beat down Bhavani. Bhavani's like, look, don't kill me or whatever. And I thought it was going to end like that. Like, oh, he's a teacher. He's beat him down already. Obviously, the school already said they're going to call the authorities. They know what's going on. But man, this guy has done so much. How do you let him live? And bro, he fatality'd him. Grabbed him, threw him on the meat hook, cousin. That was sick with it. And then they pay it off at the end. Because you're not just going to drug dealer or not, criminal or not. If you kill somebody, you're going to go to jail. And he's right in there with them at the end or whatnot. And the music from the Masters coming at the end again. And he's in the jail like, I was like, yes. So I appreciated that they gave us that at the end. Like, look, he knew what he did was wrong. But ultimately, this guy had to pay for what he did. And if he left them alive, this kid would just continue to use other kids, right? And continue to abuse other kids. So I'm so glad that it ended that way. Like I said, I had some issues with the film. It wasn't a perfect film, but man, I enjoyed so many parts of it. I just think, like I said, the Vj Sethupathi, when you can have a character that people first are cheering for and then you loathe them at the end, he did a masterful job being that Vj that we loathe, that person we hated, that when he got me hooked, you were like, yeah, me hooked. You know what I'm saying, dude? So, I got mixed feelings about the film. I'll let you think. Any final thoughts? Anything you don't think you've talked about that you wanted to talk about this film?
Some of the things that didn't work for me, like you said, the tonal shift, I didn't even think about that till you said it, but it makes perfect sense. Some of the things that didn't work for me, I mentioned early on, there was just something that was missing. It was kind of different. It was like amped up and then it brought way low. It might have been their loss in translation, but I had a little bit of murkiness with the plot. There was some situation. It seemed like there was just like maybe too many action sequences, too many different action set pieces that they were setting up. I did not like the setup for the character of Vj. Was not really rooting for him too much in the first 45 minutes, but then you're really rooting for him once he gets off the booze and he's able to focus, which is, of course, the point. It just, for me, it was really, really good, but for me, it wasn't fantastic. And so I'm going to go ahead and go first with my grade. I'm going to give this, it's so tough because I liked it a lot. I'm going to give this a B+. I'm going to give, I can't make it an A just because there was just something off about it. And I wasn't rooting for it as much as I wanted to, but it had some amazing action sequences. It had some amazing performances. It had a story that was a little hard for me to follow, but still at the same time, a very basic story. One thing that really redeemed it for me, and man, it's so close to being an A-, is it seemed like they were making Bhavani super weak at first when he gets got with the pin in his own lair with his guys.
Right.
But then how he retaliates was perfect. Okay, this guy's not weak. He's not like a paper champion, as you would say in boxing. This guy knows what he's doing. So I give it a B+.
You know what? For me, man, I too, I had some issues with it. And I struggled a little bit with it because you're right. I'm normally the bad guy, and I love the bad guys, but I think they just took it a little too dark there with that character. They made me love him to then made me hate him at the end, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like, at no point did I hate Joker in any movie, okay? Even in The Dark Knight when he's laughing at the end at Batman and see, I got my way or whatever. I love that character. He blew up a hospital. Love that character. It doesn't, at no point. But the way they changed it, the shift of his character, it just threw me off. Yeah, even Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, and I mean that's just some of the bad guys that come right to mind. Some of my favorite bad guys of all time. I'm gonna give this a B-, man. I'm gonna give this a B-. Again, I love the soundtrack. I love the dancing. If you cut out a couple of things, like Vj could have still been a gangster, right? But don't have him stringing up kids, and that just was crazy to me. And don't have him like, you were that kid. Why? And maybe it's just me personally. I'm a teacher. I got kids. You know what I mean? Like, why would you come from that world, been abused, to then do the same to these kids? You know what I mean? And people are probably saying, but Gabe, that's what happens. Okay, yeah, it may be what happens, but that's not the creative choice I would have made.
Anyways, those are our thoughts. Let us know. Comment below what you think. We try to keep these things lower than 1,000,000 hours. But when we do, people say, hey, we feel cheating here. So this is what we do. Comment below. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time.
This is the way.